Our first gathering music video was I Have a Dream from the movie Tangled. And of course, we all have dreams that pulls us together, sometimes small, sometimes personal. And then there's other dreams that rock the world, as you saw in the second music video. Sam Cooke's A Change is Gonna Come. Dreams to actions that wake the world to act and become a better place. Welcome to all. My name is Rachel, and I'm your worship associate for another hybrid service. In Unitarian Universalism, we care about you. We accept you for who and what you are. This is a non-judgmental religious home that will support you wherever you may be in your life's journey. This is a safe place to stand out, stand up, and change your mind. Our only doctrine is love. I'm in the fellowship today. Don, our virtuoso audiovisual technician, is working his magic from Las Vegas. Pam, who masterminds our services, is our adept technician here in the fellowship. The eloquent and beautiful music that Carole provides for our services is being done safely from her home today. Lit candles, hot coffee, delicious cookies are brought to you by Paul and Candy. I usually say the dynamic duo on Sunday. And Dara does everything here. Anything you need, Dara's there to help us all, and we really appreciate her. And if anyone missed Carole's service last week, you should really check it out. Don records them and then we get them posted. And the music was so uplifting, the message profound, and Carole showed more of her beauty, talent, brains, and her deeply spiritual soul. So it's quite wonderful service, and so I hope you guys will check it out in the recording. And then for all those on Zoom and here in the sanctuary, thank you for being here. We really appreciate you all. And I am pleased and thrilled to have our guest speaker, Emmeline Cordingley, back. Thank you for being here today. Emmeline will be speaking to us on sleeping to dream, waking to act. And Emmeline gave us the write-up. This is from Dr. King's 1968 address at the Morehouse College Commencement, which was entitled Remaining Awake Through the Great Revolution. On the eve of MLK Day, Emmeline will explore with us how we may honor his urging to remain awake and use our sleep not to avoid the truth, but to dream up a new reality. And I will just throw in real quick, my husband often wakes up in the morning, he goes, I had a dream about how to solve this problem. And I'm always envious because my dreams usually have me, I don't know, hiding behind doors or chasing dogs or something. Let's see, Emmeline is a Master of Divinity student at the Starr King School for the ministry in Oakland. They are studying to become an interfaith chaplain. Emmeline is originally from Massachusetts and has lived in and around LA for the past 3 years. Emmeline does not miss the East Coast winters and enjoys walking in the mountains, drinking fancy coffee, and listening for the sacred in the rustling of trees. In Unitarian Universalism, we have 7 principles. So I was looking at the title and the write-up that Emmeline gave us for today's service, and I'm going, okay, which principle does this service most support? And I really could, I'm not sure. So I looked a little bit, maybe it encompasses all 7 principles. Our first principle, inherent worth and dignity of every person, because we all have dreams, and we need to act in ways that affirm the worth and dignity of all. And then I thought, well, maybe the second principle, justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. And just like MLK, seeing a better future and justice for all citizens and taking actions to make that a reality. And of course, our third principle, acceptance of one another, encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations, and thinking about this as our collective dream. Our fourth principle, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. And again, this encompasses our dreams and actions. And it's something, the search for truth and meaning, that you use hold close to our hearts. And then there's the right of conscience and use of the democratic process within our congregations and in society at large. This is our fifth principle, taking actions to support the democratic process. And this is essential to make the American dream available to all. Sixth principle, the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. And this sounds like Martin Luther King Jr. And our dream, of course, justice for all. And our seventh principle, respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we're a part. And what actions do we take to make this dream come true locally and globally? So I'm really excited and intrigued to hear what Emmeline will offer us this morning on sleeping to dream and waking to act. And which of the principles will, maybe it'll become clear to me, or maybe it is all the principles and our actions that we take. And for those of you on Zoom, the order of service for today's program is in the email notice sent to you, and I'm hoping that everyone got it. And if not, let me know. Maybe I need to re-enter your email addresses in our email service, because I heard that somebody or a few people may not have gotten it. And let's see, if you're here in the fellowship, if you have a silent joy or sorrow, you can go ahead and light a candle at any time during the service. And Emmeline has offered once again to stick around for a few minutes after the service and answer any questions or hear any comments that you may have. And in every Unitarian church on Sundays or fellowships, we light the chalice. And if you have a candle nearby you at home, please go ahead and light it. And Emmeline's going to light our chalice as I read our chalice lighting words. We light this chalice to shine on our inner peace, to brighten our love for each other, and to illuminate our dreams. We light this chalice to be welcoming to whomever we meet and bring kindness to all living creatures. This is a light of inspiration, one of hope, and most of all, of love. Now we're going to do our centering thoughts, and there's two of them, and you'll see them on the screens. And I hope that here in the fellowship, you guys will read them when they show up on the screens. And for those of you at home, if you can go ahead and unmute yourselves, and we'll read them together. The first one. Oh, both are by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Okay. I have decided to stick with love. Hate is too great a burden to bear. And the second one. Never be afraid to do what's right. Especially the well-being of a person or animal is at stake.
Society's punishments are small compared to the wounds we inflict on our soul when we look away.
And again, taking action. Now we turn to our very talented music director, Carole, for our opening hymn, number 38, Morning Has Broken. And the words are going to be in the chat so you can sing along at home. And if you're here in the fellowship, it's in the gray hymnal. Feel free to keep on your masks and hum along or sing along.
Good morning, everyone. Please join me in Morning Has Broken. Morning has broken like the first morning. Blackbird has spoken like the first word. Praise for the singing, praise for the morning, praise more than spring, fresh from the word. Sweet the rain's dew fall, sunlit from heaven, like the first dew fall on the first grass. Praise for the sweetness
Hello, everyone. Happy to be back with you. Today's call to worship comes from Paul Robeson, who is an actor and a cultural figure in the Harlem Renaissance. And he says, "I shall take my voice wherever there are those who want to hear the melody of freedom or the words that might inspire hope and courage in the face of despair and fear. My weapons are peaceful, for it is only by peace that peace can be attained. The song of freedom must prevail."
So now please unmute yourselves. And if you're here in the fellowship, take a look at the screens. We're going to read our Unison Affirmation together and remind ourselves why we come here and why we get together each Sunday. And please read along. Remember to unmute. Love is the
Is the
spirit
spirit
of this
of this
fellowship,
fellowship,
and
and
service
service is its
law.
law.
This
This is our great covenant,
to
to
dwell
dwell together in
peace,
peace,
to
to
seek
seek
the
the
truth
truth
in
in
love,
love,
and to
to
help
love
one another.
one another.
Thank you. Now we pause our recording. And for anyone who didn't share, we also are with you. Whatever's on your heart, just know that we're here for you. And I'll just do a quick plug. We've been meeting on Fridays at noon, and our wonderful host, Paul Bogdan, for the meeting is also here. And so due to different scheduling, we've decided to move that to Mondays at noon, not tomorrow, but the following week. We'll be meeting Zoom at noon, will be on Mondays. And the reason I mention it is at this time in the service is that, we always have a topic, but it's really like a prolonged what's happening in your life, because our check-in sometimes takes up the entire hour and then we just move the topic to next week. So if you're looking for a connection, if you have things on your heart, and especially with the pandemic, join us. It's all by Zoom. Pandemic, what do you call it, safe? And we'd love to hear from you and share what's going on in your life. So now we do our offertory. And there are many ways to take action to help the fellowship, and one of those ways is with your financial support. Carole will be playing while we are passing the basket, and Candy always does such a great job of getting that together. And we have a slide up that shows ways to donate. And of course, it's also in the e-blast that you hopefully received regarding this service, or you could just mail in your checks. And now we're going to stand, if you can, here in the fellowship. And for those on Zoom, go ahead and sing, join in as we do from you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live.
From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live.
Hello. Our reading is an excerpt from this speech, Remaining Awake Through a Great Revolution. So King mentions the story of Rip Van Winkle, and he writes, when Rip Van Winkle went up into the mountain, the sign at the inn had a picture of King George III of England. And when he came down 20 years later, the sign had a picture of George Washington, the first president of the United States. When Van Winkle looked up at the picture of George Washington, he was amazed and completely lost. He knew not who he was. And this reveals to us that the most striking thing about the story of Rip Van Winkle is not merely that Rip slept 20 years, but that he slept through a revolution. While he was peacefully snoring up in the mountain, a revolution was taking place that at points would change the course of history, and Rip knew nothing about it. He was asleep. Yes, he slept through a revolution. And one of the great liabilities of life is that all too many people find themselves living amid a great period of social change, and yet they fail to develop the new attitudes, the new mental responses that the new situation demands. They end up sleeping through a revolution. And now for our meditation.
Right now,
Loosen,
close your eyes and just take a breath as we listen to this music clip that was brought to us by the late and wonderful Matthew Taylor. So just take a moment, sit, breathe, relax, and just enjoy this music clip.
Hello again. How is everyone doing? A thumbs up, another thumbs up, a little clap. Fantastic. It's fine if you're bad too, you know, we have space for everything. I really appreciate that, that choice in meditation song, Rachel. I feel so much that weight of the world and the reminder to loosen. So it's lovely to be with you all again, and I hope everyone maybe avoided the COVID spike during the holidays. And as we all know, tomorrow is Martin Luther King Day. His birthday was actually yesterday, January 15th, and he would have been 93. And I want to talk about the sermon that he delivered in 1968 at the National Cathedral in DC, which is called Remaining Awake Through a Great Revolution. And my description is slightly wrong. I realize he gave this at least 2 times. He wrote it in 1958, delivered it to Morehouse College in 59, and then delivered it again in 1968, just for the record, so we're clear. Okay. So Dr. King knew the dire importance of waking up to the reality of our political and social circumstances, because awakening is the first step towards social transformation. And looking at his speech today shows us that with awakening comes grief and moral responsibility, and how sleeping through a revolution because of willful ignorance is different from the radical and responsible sleep of rest and dreaming. When King wrote this speech in 58, jet engines had just been introduced. So the world was smaller than ever. Flight times had been cut in half. It used to take 15 hours to get from New York to LA. Then it suddenly took 7. News was traveling faster than ever before. School integration was very slowly and painfully underway. And the civil rights movement, of course, was making gains and shaking white America's complacency. Yet in the face of this progress, he warns us not to become settled into an optimism that breeds inaction, that lets us falsely believe that there is no more work to be done, that keeps us asleep throughout the revolution. Today we are, of course, in another great revolution. COVID has shaken the whole world and revealed the fundamental flaws and inequities in our American healthcare system. Employees at huge corporations like Starbucks and especially Amazon are fighting to unionize, which is very exciting and hopefully setting a precedent that values people over profit. The racial justice uprising of 2020 in response to George Floyd's murder had 15 million people flooding the streets in all 50 states to protest anti-Black violence. I didn't know that it was this large, and the New York Times writes that it may be actually the largest social political movement in all of US history. That's something that we lived through, which blows my mind and is so wild. And of course, while we're nurturing hope for meaningful change, we're also enraged at injustice and we're mourning irreplaceable losses. In a pandemic that put 30 million Americans at risk of eviction, the world's billionaires became richer somehow. And in the past 6 years, police have killed more than 5,000 people. We're 2 months away. I don't need to remind you from the 2nd anniversary of COVID lockdowns. And 850,000 people in the US alone have died from this disease. In the face of these injustices, King implores us not to distance ourselves from one another. I mean, social distancing, but other than that, but to embrace our interdependence. He maintains that our individual destinies are bound together. He writes, as long as there is poverty in the world, I can never be rich, even if I possess $1 billion. As long as millions of people are inflicted with debilitating diseases and cannot expect to live more than 35 years, I can never be totally healthy. He reminds us that we as individuals and as nations in the global community are caught up, he says, in an inescapable network of mutuality. So how do we remain awake? And what does it mean to sleep through a revolution? Waking up has long been used as a metaphor for becoming aware. And the easiest example of this association is found in Buddhism. The word Buddha comes from the Sanskrit word bud, which means both to be awake, as in I have woken up from my nap, and to know or be aware, as in I have woken up to the reality of. This connection is at least 2,100 years old. It's found in many other religious texts as well. And the ubiquity of this metaphor, this equating of the physiological process of leaving sleep and the intellectual spiritual process of realization made me look deeper into the stages of waking. So when we wake each morning, we open our eyes and maybe we stretch, we adjust to our environment, we take in the information available to our senses, the sights, the scents, the sounds. Our conscious brain kicks back into gear, populating our mind with thoughts. And we wake naturally in the morning because our optic nerve senses light and releases hormones to get our body going, sending the message that sleep is over. So what is the mechanism that prompts us to open our metaphorical eyes? King offers one answer. He quotes John Donne in this speech, who says, "Any man's death diminishes me because I am involved in mankind. Therefore, never send to know for whom the bell tolls, it tolls for thee." He tells us to live by these words, the key to remaining awake. And lately, I have felt more acutely than ever before the weight of this bell tolling. I'm feeling, of course, the weariness of 2 years of COVID, other sadnesses of different kinds, saying goodbye to a lover, the sudden death of a classmate, Matthew Taylor, and the unexpected death of my uncle last month while I was home in Massachusetts. He and my aunt live here in LA. And later today is the first time I will get to see my aunt since his passing. So more than ever, this makes it clear to me that the necessity of remaining awake is tied inextricably to the shortness of our lives, to the necessity of doing before it is too late, and to recognizing our network of mutuality. My uncle had access to good medical care, yet he had to use his vacation days to go to chemotherapy. But he did not die in the end of cancer. His passing was due to medical negligence, to the failure of his probably overworked doctors to see that his body could not withstand such aggressive treatment. It was due to the ever forward motion of American enterprise that conditioned his employers and most employers to value profit over people. And modern death is increasingly political. We see it with COVID. How many of the dead could have been saved if our country had implemented a universal healthcare system decades ago? A system that encouraged people to seek medical care instead of weighing the options, go into medical debt or pay my rent. We have to realize that the systems in place do not protect anyone but those who have designed the systems themselves. I have to place myself in the stranger's shoes always, realizing that were circumstances different, that would have been me. As such, we are obligated to see the struggle of another as our own struggle. As we increasingly awaken, and especially to the realization that we will die and our loved ones will die, there is the opportunity to use our rage and grief to lessen our fear of action, to clarify to ourselves the sanctity of life and therefore the sanctity of our neighbor and of the stranger, and to accept our moral duty to work for the liberation of all people. But why is it so hard to remain awake? My nose is dripping a little bit, TMI. Just gonna deal with that, okay? We're alive, we're doing it all, full. Why is the pull of avoidance so strong? The Black Lives Matter uprising was this strong hand that jostled so many people awake, but it is too easy to be sparked into action when it's flashy and immediate and in the streets, and then retreat back into hibernation afterwards. Waking up is hard, yes. It means having to grieve, having to deal with the twisting anguish of knowing that inequity and injustice are incomprehensible, that in the eyes of nature, we are all the same and equally precious, but in the iniquitous eyes of society, we are not. And I am tired. Grief is tiring. Living is tiring, and unfairly more so for some than for others. And in resisting awakening, perhaps we are trying to find rest. In that case, shifting our focus from avoidance to true and deep restfulness may allow us to more easily rub the sleep from our eyes. The sleep of rest, how radical it is to dwell in unproductivity, to lounge, to linger in bed, to stretch like a cat in the sun and turn deeper into the covers. Radical in our capitalist society, radical especially for Black and Brown people historically and currently denied it. The NAP Ministry is an arts collective and community organizing group that was formed in response to this truth. And they say, we believe rest is a form of resistance, and name sleep deprivation as a racial and social justice issue. And true deep rest is not, as I sometimes fool myself into believing, scrolling on Instagram for an hour. True rest is going to the forest, walking on the beach, literally sleeping, giving and receiving focused attention to and from our loved ones, making art, dancing. It is not laboring, it is not planning, it is not hustling. Lately, I have been feeling the pressure like a force on my chest of all of these little and big griefs swirling around me. I have been trying to cry more often to release the tension and pain of suppressing grief. and trying to find ways to honor myself, my body's and spirit's need for ease and rest, teaching myself that I can both honor my needs and still show up for the revolution. Rest is our sacred right and a necessary component of remaining awake. And then without the sleep of dreaming, daydreams, night dreams, and imaginings, there is no liberation. There's no future at all. Our ability to take action to heal and transform oppressive structures is predicated on our ability to imagine new ways of being and new ways of relating. Immersing ourselves in art, books, film, what-if conversations is an easy way to open these doors of possibility for ourselves. For example, historically, if the Wright brothers never imagined the possibility of flight, we'd be taking trains everywhere. And of course, Martin Luther King had a dream that our society could eradicate racism, a dream so far unfulfilled, a dream we're fighting for to this day, but one that spurred the passage of the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act. Without imagination, we are stuck in the status quo. So we see the sleep of ignorance is a habit we must break. The sleep of rest is a gift. The sleep of dreaming new futures is our duty. We are still in a great revolution, and there is so much to be done. We all have different gifts, limitations, and capacities. Waking up is a process with unending stages, unending stairs to climb. It is lifelong. We aim to do, period, not to do perfectly. Once more, the words of Reverend Dr. King: "The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice." King said this on March 31st, 1968. 4 days later, he was assassinated. That bell has been tolling for us all since then, ringing us awake. Thank you all.
That was really something, Emmeline. I'm so sorry to hear about your uncle, but God, I love the way that you deliver your sermons and the visuals of the metaphorical eye of awakening. I mean, so many beautiful words that just really touch my heart. And yeah, staying awake. I'm inspired and I feel more awake. We're now going to have our very last hymn, The Fire of Commitment. It's in our teal hymnal. The words will be in chat. And we ask everyone to sing along. And so not only is Emmeline phenomenal in her sermons, but standing up here, this woman has a great voice. So anyway, and I say that because Mike and Paul and I, we're the ones that always hum. So, and Paul, thank you for singing out loud. Okay.
So as we extinguish this chalice, I will read our parting words. If you have the book, they're number 434. I would love to read the second part all together if the book is available to us, or the words possibly on the screen. Hallelujah. I'm going to read the first paragraph, and then I'm going to lift my hand so we can read the second paragraph all together. So thank you, Rachel, for extinguishing the chalice. May we be reminded here of our highest aspirations and inspired to bring our gifts of love and service to the altar of humanity. May we know once again that we are not isolated beings, but connected in mystery and miracle to the universe, to this community, and to each other. Blessed be. Thank you all for letting me speak to you today.
Now we're going to join our hearts together as we stand. Everybody here will form a circle. And if you're at home on Zoom, please sing along for our closing song, Let There Be Peace on Earth.
Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, the peace that is meant to be. With earth as our mother, we are family. Let us walk with each other in perfect harmony. Let peace begin with me. Let this be the moment now. With every breath I take, let this be my solemn vow. To take each moment and live each moment in peace eternally. Let there be peace on earth. Let it begin with me. Have a lovely day, everyone.